Good morning, everybody. November 27th. Mike Piazza here. I just sent out an email to all the partners. Just kind of, uh, illustrate that we've had three horses that we've bought um, to debut as 2 year olds this year, and all three have put up impressive beginnings. And in that email, I mentioned how a lot of the horses that we buy, if not all of them, are relatively inexpensive. And I say relatively because I think $100,000 is a lot of money, but $100,000 at a 2 year old sale actually isn't. In that email, a couple of people have replied that they have seen studies that show that buying expensive horses is a way to basically fail, and all the best finds are somewhere in the bottom middle area. So basically, there's no reason to really justify spending big money for a horse. Um, and there's a little truth to it if you look at the extremes. Like I'm not talking, hey, I wish we had enough money to buy the most expensive horse. But basically, what I'm trying to say is, when you go to a 2 year old sale, there's a catalog of say 1,200 horses, and let's just say half of those horses will go over $100,000 or over 75,000. And let's just say 75,000 is your maximum budget for a horse. Well, basically, you're saying that if you can only afford up to 75,000, then half the catalog you can just throw it in the trash can because you don't have the ability to even go look at those horses. I mean, you can go look at them, but if you can't acquire them, then you're just wasting your time. So the thing that people are failing to see here is that it's not so much about what you spend, but how you spend it. But if you're sharp at assessing talent, then you're going to want to have access to the best talent available. Think of a basketball team. If you were an NBA scout and your job was to go out and obtain the top talent for your basketball team, would you rather select players from Division One colleges or Division Two colleges? Now, certainly there's going to be some nice players in Division Two, but is it reasonable to believe that you, on a daily basis and a year-by-year basis, could assemble a team with nothing but Division Two and Division Three players and expect that team to go out and beat a team that is constantly acquiring players from Division One? It's not reasonable, especially when we race on the big stage. Racing at Naira, we're running against the big boys. So that analogy is spot on. There's a reason why in college basketball, for the most part, it's the same teams that dominate every year. It's because they have the ability to go out and select any player they want from high schools. Whereas a Division Two, Division Three college doesn't get that kind of talent. Now, so if it doesn't matter purchase price, well, or availability, your ability to acquire such player, then why aren't the Division Two, Division Three teams routinely beating up the Division One top teams? Why? I mean, of course you'll see the outliers, and that's the ones that make the headlines. But overall, in a large sample, you're not going to compete against any outfit who has top draft picks selecting from the top players. So when you go to a 2 year old sale, having a budget that is very high just means you have the ability to select from a larger pool of horses. Now, when you go to a 2 year old sale, there are three things that will determine the horse's purchase price, in my opinion. One is the conformation, how that horse is put together, how he's built. Bad conformation often will lead to a horse never making it to the racetrack, or a horse, if it does make it to the racetrack, often will have problems staying sound. The other characteristic that will determine a purchase price is how much speed that horse shows during the breeze. Now, during that breeze, how the horse gets over the track is also important, so I like to define that whole process as that horse displaying his athleticism. And horses who display tremendous athleticism are going to cost money. The third component is pedigree. A horse who has a proven sire and a proven dam who has produced winners is going to cost money. So I can guarantee, just like in the basketball scenario, if you, on a year-to-year basis, could only select horses who could only check one of those three boxes, you could only pick horses that either had pedigree and bad conformation and no athleticism, or you could choose horses who have, great athleticism but a blank pedigree and bad conformation. And then I was able to keep selecting horses that had perfect conformation, excellent athleticism, and had awesome pedigree behind it. I can guarantee that on a large sample, you would have no chance to compete against me. So you do want to have as much access to as many of the players as possible and the ability to select the ones from that pool. So also, if it was that simple of just buying horses in a lower pool, then challenge you guys to do this. Look up all the partnerships out there because this data is available, or even just owners in general. But most people don't really know individual owners in racing, but most of you guys are going to be familiar with other, say, partnerships. And just go look at all the partnerships who routinely buy relatively cheap horses and tell me how many graded stake winners have come from there. Not many, I can promise you. Now, the outfits that are out there who are spending big money, yeah, they're going to have a lot of wasteful spending in there. There's going to be a lot of horses that were spent where they spent a lot of money and those horses didn't do anything. But they will have home runs. Home runs are going to come from the better pool. Now, you do hear stories of cheap horses who become stake horses and stuff. But see, you have to also realize the volume of horses that we're talking. There's very few expensive horses, and there's very, very, very many inexpensive horses. So the pool of inexpensive horses is huge. So it's easier on a numbers basis for something to kind of rise to the top from that massive pool of horses. It's kind of like a baseball player who's not a very good hitter, but if he gets a lot of at-bats, he's going to get some hits. So the pool of expensive horses is smaller. And those are like when you hear all the stories like Green Monkey and these expensive horses, those make headlines. But we're not talking about the very top of the top. I'm not saying let's go out and spend millions on horses. But I can guarantee you, you guys see the results that we've had with relatively inexpensive horses. But the part that you guys don't see is this year alone and last year, how many horses who have already won graded stake races that were on our radar and came off of our radar because we could not afford those horses. So, see, had we been able to buy those horses, now all of a sudden you're seeing Zilla Racing Stables, multiple graded stake winning owner. But I challenge you to go out, find in a large sample, any ownership out there who routinely is buying lots of horses in a cheaper price range, and show me one who's routinely putting out multiple graded stake horses. Now, yeah, maybe there's an outfit out there who had, hit a home run with one. But honestly, you look at all those purchases, 30,000, 40, 50, 60,000, go find me the graded stake horses that are coming out of there. There's not many at all. So that's all it pretty much comes down to, is having a budget just gives you the ability to purchase a horse. It doesn't mean you spend it. If I had $1 million budget, that doesn't mean, okay, let's just go spend $1 million on a horse because I can. But if you have a sharp team working with you, the more horses that are available to you, the better chance you have of finding a really nice horse. So make no mistake, it is not easy finding quality stake horses from a low pool because, like I said, the low pool has a lot of risk to it. No pedigree, bad conformation, no athleticism, or some combination of that. I think we all would agree we'd rather have horses that check all the boxes. That's where, like, there's a reason why in every sport teams want first round draft choices, and they want as high of a first round draft choice as they can get. If it didn't matter, teams wouldn't even care what draft pick they had. If it was just that simple of landing good players in round 7 and round 8, why would teams even care about trying to get a first round draft pick? What difference would it make? So the best talent comes at a price, whether it's money or a high draft pick or something to that nature. And I can give you example after example in every aspect of life, every aspect of sports. So don't get fooled into believing that it's the way to go is to keep buying inexpensive horses. Depends what your goal is. If your goal is to play risk adverse, yeah, buy $30,000 horses. You can't get burnt too badly. But if your goal is to win graded stake races and make it to the big races, the Kentucky Derby and the Breeders' Cup and all that stuff, and I can promise you guys, if you pull up the racing form on Breeders' Cup Day or anything, and you look at all those horses that are running in those graded stake races, most of them cost a couple $100,000 as yearlings. Now some have went cheap, but again, you're talking about the volume of cheap horses. But you're not going to see it. You're going to see horses that are costing a couple $100,000 as yearlings. Those are the ones who make up the majority of the stake races, and it's for a reason. So I challenge you guys, find me some outfits who can routinely go out there and pick graded stake horses, yet they're spending no money. I've already done the research, so I already know it doesn't exist. But if you want to see if it does, you're free to do so. Hope that helps. This is my first video I made doing this, and hopefully it was a success. Bye-bye.